Well, one of the biggest problems currently facing the tech industry is the skill shortage. I'm sure you've heard plenty about it, not just on this show as well, but more broadly in the industry. So some of the attention is now turning to staff retention. But given the last 2 years, how do you make sure that staff stay with your startup, particularly as you're going through some of those growing startup pains? To tell us his thoughts, we're joined by Nigel Fellowes-Freeman from Kanopi. Nigel, how do you keep staff?
So I think it's a challenge that firstly, thanks for having me. I really appreciate you kind of making some time in this kind of lead up to the end of the year. And so I guess it's something that I personally been chatting to a bunch of founders about, and I think it's something that you experience as a startup founder forever. It's always a challenge to get the right people and to keep the right people. But in this current environment, kind of retention is becoming more and more important because it's harder to attract new talent, because kind of the pool of talent has been kind of really reducing for a period of time because of all the border restrictions, everything's been going on. And so here we've been taking, I guess, a really, I suppose, trying to take an innovative approach, and how can we kind of be different to other companies. And so we've really focused on kind of how we can think about autonomy, how we can think about flexibility, how we can think about bringing kind of ESOP pools, and so really kind of bringing all of our employees along for the ride. And so I think that's a real kind of focus for us, is how can we really kind of put ourselves in our employees' shoes, and what would make them love to come to work every day. And they're the things that we really focus on.
So what are some of those things involved in that? Because obviously there is the picture of startups doing the things like the video games in the corner, the ping pong table. Now I think that's quite a outdated method of staff retention. But what are some of the things involved with wanting people to stay and to come into the office even?
Yeah, look, I think maybe that last point you made there in terms of coming to the office is an important one. I think for us, we kind of start as one of our core values of the business is transparency, and so we're very transparent with everyone, and ask all of the team to be transparent with us, and so really seek feedback all of the time, making sure when we're asking the team to maybe put some more effort in to be able to kind of deliver on a certain time frame, and then how can we then make sure that we give back on the other side. And so really having that kind of clear, transparent communication with your team, I think, is super important. We kind of are really something that a lot of startups don't do is really focus on personal and professional development. It's something that kind of maybe gets left to the corporate structures and doesn't really get put into startups. And that's something that when we're thinking about retention, is something that we've had a real focus on, of how can we make sure that we provide the framework for our team to really grow in the way that they want to, be able to have kind of the conversations and the personal growth, both professionally and personally. And I suppose the final thing that when we kind of seek feedback and chat to the team about what they really want, is really autonomy and ownership. And so we kind of really make sure that we give a huge amount of trust, ownership, and autonomy to the team to really make decisions on a daily basis, and that really empowers them to grow, and that's fantastic for the business. If you've got a team of self-managing people, then you can really kind of put the foot on the gas and do great things, I think.
And then obviously, we're trying to keep the staff. We're not necessarily looking for new ones, but businesses and particularly startups often have new skills that they need. They're growing at such exponential rates that they do often are hiring as fast as they're trying to keep. What are you seeing out there? We do have that skill shortage. The migration has slowed. What's happening, and how are startups going to go around this problem?
Yeah, look, it's definitely a problem. I obviously, as we all do in terms of founders, we chat with each other and understand what we're all going through, and it's a real theme that at the moment, kind of finding talent is a real challenge, and a real part of that, because there's a straight supply demand issue. Then kind of salaries really skyrocket. And so then when you're really kind of competing on a salary only basis, that makes it really, really tough. And so I guess that's why we've really kind of considered as a business to really think about retention. And when you're thinking about retention, all of those things really create employee brand. And so how are you becoming an employer of choice? Why would someone want to work for you? And maybe they're getting paid as a base salary a little bit less than maybe a large corporate that they're being offered, but actually the package that you bring together in terms of flexibility, global workforce, kind of employee shares, wellness leave, kind of weekends away, all those kind of things that you can do to really kind of make a work experience a fantastic thing. That's really, I think, how you can compete with maybe the base salaries that can be higher in in some of the larger corporates that can throw the checkbook at getting staff.
Do you also think, and that goes back to your previous point about professional development, because you are in a startup, you don't necessarily always know exactly what you need rather. So if a person can start with it, you can offer them development in ways that a bigger organization might not be able to because they do have a more siloed role.
Yeah, look, I think that's really the nature of a lot of folks that start work in young growing companies, is the want and desire to have a really broad scope of work. Because obviously, as the larger organization you kind of get much more kind of narrowed in terms of your kind of scope of work. And so really kind of, I suppose that come back that autonomy and empowering staff to really be able to have open communication, open, transparent communication around what their wants and desires are. And then kind of how can you work every day to create the environment to make them successful. And if you do that really effectively, then they grow personally, professionally, and that has a kind of secondary impact on helping the company grow. And so that's kind of how we kind of think about it internally here.
And what are you guys up to at the moment? You know, we talked about the staff, we talked about keeping them. What is it that your staff are working on right now and heading into the new year?
Yeah, look, at 2022, obviously at the moment, kind of a bit of how can we kind of get the things that are outstanding, how can we get them wrapped up before almost the end of the week? And then in terms of looking into 2022 for us, we obviously kind of did some capital raising earlier in the year, and that was really focused on global markets, and that's a focus for us in the new year, is entering those global markets, and secondly, really building a really kind of global workforce. And so they're really the two key things that we as a business are going to be focused on, especially in kind of Q1 and Q2 of next year.
Are there any particular jurisdictions for that focus?
Yeah, look, the two main areas that we're looking, kind of US, Canada, and UK, they're in the mix at the moment, and so we're doing some kind of background work at the moment around the execution of partnerships in those regions. But they're the two regions we're looking at.
And when it comes to as you said, you are going to be doing the sort of the burst of these new work. Are you guys taking a little bit more time off over Christmas to give that break to the workers before you come back in, refreshed, revamped, and ready to go?
Yeah, it's a really interesting point, actually. I think it's something that we've actually considered, not just at the end of the year here, but throughout the year. And we did notice at periods of time that we noticed the team were definitely logging on late and doing a bunch of work, and there was kind of bursts of energy that we were asking for the team. And then we kind of sought some feedback from them around how they were feeling, and there was that feeling that we were kind of pushing pretty hard. And so we kind of pulled back a little bit. We kind of gave like extended weekends off, closed the business on a Friday occasionally to let the team have a long weekend. And so I think rather than just thinking about it at the end of the year, it's something that we as a company making sure we kind of seek feedback throughout the year to make sure that we can push and pull and put ourselves in the staff shoes throughout the year. But then I guess at the end of the year now, rather than a normal kind of complete close down of the office, I should say, for 2 weeks, we've kind of given a bunch of flexibility to the team, because obviously they haven't really taken too much leave throughout the year this year. And so we really want to make sure that we both give them the chance to decompress and have the time now, but also kind of coming into the new year, making sure they've got that leave balance, that they can go and do the things they want to do and enjoy their time. And so not forcing them to take leave in specific times, but really kind of putting it in their hands to take the time when they feel it's right.
Well, Nigel, I hope you get to enjoy some of that time off for yourself as well. Thank you so much for joining us on Startup Daily to talk through these problems.
Pleasure. Thanks so much for your time. Have a great end of the year break.